Welcome to Nice and Blunt. I'm Adam Riancho, and it's Sunday, week 17. Time for the last video of the season. Maybe you play in week 18. I'm upset that you do. I really hate that some of you do, but let's set your lineup for the last time, shall we? We had the Charger game earlier today. Sadly, they lost, and I'm not going to lie, lost a little bit of faith in the last 12 hours. Wouldn't have expected Cameron Dicker of all players to be the reason that they kind of shit the bed. But really, it started with that Jaden Higgins touchdown. Sadly, they never had the lead in that game. But let's get it going. Let's talk about the rankings. If you haven't noticed, I did lose my voice a little bit, so we're going to try and go quickly and touch on every single position. We're going to start at running back, and I have shown you a lot of my rankings throughout the week. Back on Tuesday, we had some early rankings. Yesterday, if you watched the start sit, I also broke down my rankings, and these are the final ones. And at least at running back, I think there are 18 players that are kind of locked into your lineup this week. At least as a great RB2, I want all of these players. I do believe Bijan is going to have the best game this week against the Rams. That game should be fun, and I do believe Bijan is going to excel. The Christian McCaffrey game, I think, will be a little bit less explosive, but still very dynamic. Against the Bears, that game is also going to be a shootout. These elite options are always locks in the lineup. And Jahmyr Gibbs, sadly, did let us down. That Vikings defense is legit, and Gibbs has kind of been a little bit mediocre at times down the stretch. So, sadly, he let you down. But James Cook is probably going to get into a shootout here against Saquon. I see some rain in that game that will lead to extra rush attempts. Saquon's been playing very well. That Bills matchup is elite this year. And then the Eagles matchup for James Cook is actually not that bad. And Cook is just on fire. Cook has the potential to be the RB1. So I like him a lot. I like Saquon. They're in my top 5. Those are obvious. But Chase Brown, I have at number 6. Given the passing game volume he's getting from Joe Burrow, he's warranted that early draft capital we spent. It took a long time to hit, but last month, especially since Burrow has returned, Chase Brown is money in the bank. So cannot bench him. The volume is just too good. And he gets the Cardinals this week. That's one of the best matchups on the slate the entire season. There's no way I'm benching Chase Brown. I'm also not going to bench Travis Etienne. He gets the Colts this week, and that defense has kind of started to slip. Odds are the Jags win this game, but at the very least, Baishal Tutin has been ruled out. He did practice, and that's just going to lock in all the volume for Etienne. So that's a player I'm starting, no doubt about it. And Taylor in the same game, despite some lackluster performances, he looked a lot more mediocre lately. Back to kind of the running back 11 that we drafted last few games, but still a lock in the lineup regardless of that, still in the top 10 for sure. Not going to bench Jonathan Taylor, but I'm actually really excited about Ashton Jeanty this week. I feel like that Giants game is going to be really entertaining, and they are not benching Jeanty. Jeanty staying healthy. Bowers and Crosby have been benched, but the Giants are also depleted, starting to bench some of their players, and Jeanty gets a great matchup. I absolutely trust Ashton Jeanty. So I want him in the lineup. Last week we saw some elite production. I was wrong about him 2 weeks ago, and then it scared me off last week. Shockingly, he had his great game in the much tougher matchup against Houston compared to the Eagles game. But regardless, there was a very high ceiling for Jeanty last week. So that's what I want to believe in, that Raiders offense is going to go through him entirely. So no defense opposite him to stop him. I think Jeanty goes off. I think he's a top 10 play, to be honest. I also told you to start Javonte Williams and RJ Harvey. That worked out. They both scored a touchdown. Harvey played pretty well. We also have Derrick Henry, though. I wish I ranked him higher. Holy shit, 4 touchdowns. This is going to be the piece that wins you Underdog, the best ball championship. Henry with 4 touchdowns, 260 yards. Man, what a performance by Derrick Henry. Holy shit. At least I picked the Ravens to win, but I did rank Henry too low. The upside is very comparable for TreVeyon Henderson, though. The house call potential is always there with him, and I do believe he will play. Obviously, he's a game time decision with a concussion. I think he's going to be active. He was full on Friday, and I think he'll clear by kickoff. So you got to make sure. Obviously, we don't know as of this taping, but I do think TreVeyon will play, and if he is, I want him in my lineup. I think the upside is totally worth it. And I don't think he's going to miss. I genuinely think they will play him. They want that number 1 seed. TreVeyon, I want him in the lineup, no doubt about it. As long as he's active, start him. But if he's not, then I would have Rhamondre right here. I think Rhamondre would be right in this spot if there's no TreVeyon. That Jets matchup is one of the best this season. But Kenny Gainwell has been on fire. I think I want to start him, especially with the DK Metcalf. I think that target share will increase, and he's been dynamic in the passing game. I don't want to fade a player that's on a hot streak. And I also view Jaylen Warren comparably. Warren's also playing really, really well. However, I think from a matchup standpoint, I like the PPR value a little bit more. For Kenny Gainwell, I just do. Jaylen Warren has some good games against the Browns, but at times in his career against the Browns, he has struggled for touchdowns. There's one elite game a couple years ago, but otherwise his efficiency hasn't quite been there. The Browns at times have had a good defense, especially against the run, and if they're going to show up for one last game of the season, I think it's this one against Pittsburgh. I think they want to play spoiler. At the very least, I do think they might step up a little bit and keep Warren out of the end zone. I still think he scores, but if there's one guy I think is limited a little bit more in this game, it is Warren compared to Gainwell. So I want them both. I'm not telling you to bench either, but I do prefer Gainwell this week over Jaylen Warren. I'm fading Achane, though. His stats without Tua just aren't very good. If you had him last week, you were disappointed, and I could see a similar situation. That Bucks matchup is awesome, though, and that's where I'm still keeping him in the lineup. But he's my RB 16 behind Gainwell and Warren. I know it sounds crazy, you always start your studs, but I'm just ranking him how I think he'll finish. I genuinely think Achane is not the same player without Tua. The offense is more predictable, and opponents want to force Ewers to beat them. They're going to cover Achane on every play, expecting him to get the ball. If it goes elsewhere, so be it. But Achane will get limited in terms of efficiency. I'm worried about that, especially on the goal line. That could be a problem. So Achane, not the same top 10 play. Without Tua, just not the same situation. Kyren, though, if he had all to himself, I'd rank him top 5 this week against the Falcons. I would love this spot for him. However, with Blake Corum really emerging, and especially on the goal line, Blake Corum has a touchdown, at least one minimum, in each of his last 4 games, a total 5 in that span. That's just keeping those touchdowns away from Kyren. That's the problem. He has to split it with his backup. So Kyren also diminished returns, but still in my top 20. I'm still starting Kyren Williams. But DeAndre Swift in an offense that could go nuclear this week, but also splits touches with Kyle Monangai, and that's just the only hesitation I have there. But if there's one matchup the Niners are at least somewhat competent at defending, it is the running back position. That defense has been a little bit better in that regard. But all of these players in my top 18 are guys I'm starting. There's no way I'm benching any of them. If you ask me, they're all the best. RB2s, if not RB1s. But this is my second tier. These are the flex plays at running back that I would want in my lineup as well. And I did tell you that Hampton was going to be a top 20 play going in to Saturday. He had a touchdown. He was terrible on the ground, but he got a lot of receptions. And thankfully that did salvage a solid fantasy game. 16 points. That's not bad from Hampton. So it paid off. Jacobs, though, damn, this was a bad call. Holy shit. He was off the injury report. That shit threw me for a loop. I mean, sorry. I did rank him pretty low compared to where he normally is, but clearly not low enough. At RB20, I wish I just told you to flat out bench him. I did rank him as a flex play, but still, my bad. I apologize on Jacobs. Wish I knew better, but sometimes that mantra of start your studs in the fantasy playoffs and championship just doesn't work out when they're injured. Jacobs clearly not 100%. Then I have Walker and Charbonnet. These two are always kind of paired up together, and last week they did play awesome. I do think a touchdown's more likely for Charbonnet, but I do kind of also just trust Walker a bit more in terms of yardage. I think both will play well. That Panthers matchup's elite right now. Top 4 in the last month, definitely a spot you want to start running back. So give me Walker just outside the top 20 and Charbonnet right behind him. I think they're both very legit high-end flex plays. I would assume both find the end zone. But then I got Blake Corum, who's been finding the end zone like clockwork, a very safe play for double digits, and I trust that to repeat. I really like Corum. I think he's legit. I don't think his role is going away. It seems like he's earned the trust of Sean McVay. If anything, next year I think Blake Corum might be a smash pick, one of the best handcuffs you can find, and might actually overtake Kyren at some point next year. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. But Tony Pollard, I got him right behind, and he's been playing very well. That Titans run game is actually stepping up lately, and although Tyjae is tempting, I still prefer Pollard, to be honest. So the Saints game, not the easiest matchup for him, but I'm just going to trust the recent production. I'm trusting the hot streak of the Titans backfield. Let's start Tony Pollard. I think it's worth it. But Dylan Sampson, a lower tier flex play. His injury status is the main concern. He's not a lock to play. He missed last week. He's a game time call, but he was also limited in every practice this week. I assume he'll be active. I'm not worried about that. My only concern is the volume. How healthy is he? How many touches are you going to get? Especially in the passing game, that's his main value. He has awesome PPR production so far. When he gets the rock, he has been a workhorse, no doubt. So with no Judkins, this is the only running back in Cleveland I want. And I kind of like the matchup on top of that. The Steelers don't scare me enough to fully panic. He's a flex play, not a lock in the lineup for sure. But as long as he plays, I think the volume will carry you, especially in a full PPR format. I would trust those catches a lot more. In terms of floor, I don't see a better option, to be honest. So let's hope he suits up. If not, Raheem Sanders, I think, is the preferred backup. But to be honest, I have no desire to start Raheem Sanders. Then we got Tyrone Tracy right behind him against the Las Vegas Raiders. And there's a lot of injuries, especially on the offensive line for the Giants this week. And I don't know. Vibes are really off with this game. Like, I can't tell if it's a massive shootout or a really low score. Odds are there's no defense, and that's enticing. But no offensive line either. Tracy behind a bunch of backups. Not my most inspiring play, if you ask me. But Woody Marks had a terrible matchup. He did not find the end zone, so didn't pay off. Not a great play. At least he was active, but he split a lot more work with Jawar Jordan than I would have thought. Bucky Irving has been splitting a lot of touches with Sean Tucker, especially on the goal line, and that's where all the value is in this offense here. So not a safe play. I genuinely think Bucky is more of a bench than anything, but inside my top 30 in the flex discussion, good luck against Miami. I might be really fading him too far, but to be honest, I genuinely like every player. I rank above him more in the lineup. We got Rico Dowdle right behind him, though, and that game against Seattle, not a good matchup. I could see Chuba also factor in. His workload has been diminishing, and he's just not that effective anymore. It's just not as good as it once was. He's fine, but this is the week where I would not expect a touchdown. Just like Bucky, even if he gets 16 touches, I think the matchup is not ideal, and I'm worried it just doesn't happen on the goal line properly. So no thanks with Dowdle. I think at this point we want to bench him, but a pair of backups, we got Monangai and then Montgomery. Montgomery was awful against the Vikings. That matchup was bad. But the Niners matchup for Monangai is kind of tempting. We got Swift well above him. Swift in 2 tiers above. I want Swift, no doubt. But Monangai could definitely play spoiler at times, gets equal volume, and has also been very effective at times. Monangai's legit. I like Monangai quite a bit in that offense. So he is in the flex territory, RB30. You could definitely do worse, but you could definitely do better. And odds are in a 12-team league, I'm benching Kyle Monangai just because I have limited space. I just don't think he'll fit on the roster. Not that he's going to be bad. I think he can still get you 10 points, but I just don't think it's worth trusting. The ceiling, I doubt will go over 12 this week. But that's it for the players I'm really considering. Beyond that, in the bottom 2 tiers, really, you're going to trust these guys? I think you're going to be a little desperate. Sadly, I did dismiss JCM too much, though, and I did not adjust my rankings the day of once Rodriguez was ruled inactive. I did not see that in time, so apologies on Wednesday. Hopefully, you started JCM at a great game, but at the time, I did rank Chris Rodriguez here, assuming both would be active. So this is like a hindsight ranking. Obviously, I was too low on JCM. If I knew Rodriguez wouldn't play, I probably would not have ranked him like, in the top 20 or anything, but I probably would have had him closer to Woody Marks, probably a little bit closer to Woody Marks. But anyways, can't hit on everything. We got Rhamondre right behind him, and if Rhamondre gets this backfield all to himself, then I would rank him right here, or where TreVeyon is. But I don't think that'll happen. I think TreVeyon will suit up, so we're just hoping for a touchdown with Rhamondre, and it's just the matchup against the Jets. It could definitely happen. Rhamondre still gets volume, but I definitely prefer TreVeyon by quite a lot. So not going to start both. I'll bench Rhamondre Stevenson, and then Tyjae Spears, similar logic. I'm not going to start both Titans running backs. So bench Tyjae, but could see him pop off against the Saints, perhaps in the passing game. He plays well, but not willing to bet on it. Not my cup of tea. I'm only trusting Pollard of the two. Breece Hall, not going to trust the Jets offense. He's actually not been as productive as Isaiah Davis last couple games. So no thanks there. Pacheco was dog shit. Aaron Jones was decently effective. If I'm not mistaken, he had a okay game. But then we got Michael Carter here. I don't really want the Cardinals running back. I know the Bengals matchup's good. I know there's not really much competition for Carter, but they just can't run the ball. They got no offensive line. You need receptions and a touchdown, and I just don't trust the Arizona Cardinals to give you a rushing touchdown. That is so unlike them. Very rarely does that hit. I wouldn't bet on it with Carter. I just don't see the upside with Carter. So no thanks, despite the volume. Not worth it in my opinion. And Isaiah Davis is actually, I was tempted to rank him above Breece Hall because he has been playing a little better last couple games, but still reluctant to fully go that far. I doubt I would do that. Against the Patriots, it's not a good matchup. I'd rather just trust Breece Hall if I'm trusting a Jet, but not trusting any of them, benching both. And then Emmanuel Wilson was better than Jacobs at least, but not the best game. He was kind of well behind Malik Willis's production. Malik Willis stole the show on the ground, but Jawar Jordan factored in, but not very much. This was like a contingent rank if Woody wouldn't play. And Woody did play, so Jawar had to be benched. Ty Johnson, I think, in the bad weather could contribute, but need a house call. Otherwise, the volume's not high enough. Sean Tucker could get a touchdown again. He probably will, but I'm not going to start him. I'm not willing to do that in the fantasy championship. No thanks. But Estime, I think, is well behind Taysom Hill, to be honest, so not interested there. Algier needs a touchdown. I wouldn't bet on it against the Rams. That defense on the season has been really tough. Lately it's been better, but I'm only trusting Bijan. And then Jordan Mason, honestly, I don't remember his stat line at all, but I think he didn't play. Right. He didn't play at all. Then we got Kimani Vidal, who also did not play. Glad I told you to bench him. And then Chuba Hubbard here. I guess he'll be better than Mason and Vidal, but last player ranked in these ranks. So that's it at running back. Let me know if you have any questions down below. But I think we can move on. I think I've mentioned all I'd like to say. At wide receiver, I think the volume at the position is much more straightforward. These players in the top 26 are the guys I want to start. My wide receiver 1s and wide receiver 2s, I think they are locks in the lineup for the most part. Obviously, as we move down the depth, depending on your situation, you can start benching them if you just don't have the space. But the argument to be benching them, I think that's the only case to be made. These are the top 26 receivers I want to start. You always have to start at least 24 in a 12-team league, and it goes up from there. So these guys I just don't think can be benched, really. Puka, really? Adams is doubtful. Puka's the best play, if you ask me. Jamar Chase against Arizona, that game should be very high scoring, at least for the Bengals offense, so going to trust Jamar. Wow, what a shocker. JSN, got to trust him, but the toughest matchup among the top 5 against Carolina. JC Horn, pretty tough. At least of the top 3. Perhaps Amon-Ra's matchup was tougher. But CeeDee Lamb didn't find the end zone, so what can you do? You couldn't have benched him, so it is what it is. But then we got A.J. Brown. There's no way I'm benching A.J. Brown. I think against the Bills, that game could be like 38-35. And A.J. Brown is unguardable half the time. So I assume Jalen Hurts will throw it deep. He'll be forced to. And it's not going to be snowing. I don't think they run it like crazy. Not too much to the point where they don't throw the ball. A.J. Brown will get his. Got to start. A.J. Brown. Olave, after last week, got to start him. He has a back injury, but only limited on Friday. He is expected to be fine and good to go. And against Tennessee, I want that matchup. I'm not benching Chris Olave. The volume is elite, given all the injuries they have elsewhere. But DJ Moore, with other injuries, especially Rome Odunze, I think has to be started. The Niners are a really good matchup And Caleb, I think, will play well. I think they win the game. DJ Moore is developing a really good connection with Caleb last few weeks. So let's bet on that again. Definitely top 10 in my opinion. But Drake London, I know last week was bad, but the upside with him is just too valuable. And while there are some red flags in these next coming players, I am going to say, who cares? I don't have them above DJ Moore, but still in the top 10. I'm not benching Drake London. He had 3 touchdowns against Christian Gonzalez and the Patriots. Against the Rams, it's a really good matchup. That secondary sucks, and London, I think, will go off. He should, and as long as he should, I don't think there's an argument to bench him. George Pickens also, I don't think there was an argument to bench either. He did not score a touchdown, but oftentimes whenever you have a house call in some team's offense, like with Cavonte Turpin, that is essentially a 3 and out in regards to George Pickens. That doesn't help any other player on just one play. But still, Pickens was underwhelming. Would have assumed he'd play a little bit better, but he was okay, not atrociously bad, just no touchdown. Sadly, didn't work out. But Michael Wilson, absolutely going to start him against the Bengals. Their defense been okay against receivers, but that game, even if it's not a shootout, will have a ton of garbage time, and Brissett just locks onto Wilson. There's no way I'm benching him. Definitely the alpha, even while Harrison has returned. But then we got T. Higgins right behind him in the same game. Not going to bench him. Touchdown feels kind of locked in with T. Higgins every week. So as long as Burrow and him are healthy, cannot bench T. Higgins. Also, I don't think you can bench Mike Evans. Not much time left, but I think they will give him some good looks. I think they win the game, and the passing game I think will hit for Mike Evans here. So I'm going to trust him. I would assume a touchdown against Miami does work out. I feel like he's due, and with only 2 games left in the regular season, they're going to get as much as they can out of Evans. Who knows how much more time he has left with this team. I assume they'll give him 10 plus targets. So gonna start him. The Dolphins don't scare me enough. And then Nico, I did fade a little bit against the Chargers, but still told you to start. And didn't find the end zone, but still was the leading receiver for his team in terms of targets and receptions. So the process I think was still fair, but I did lower him outside the top 10. We do have Flowers here, who did score a touchdown, thankfully, but without it would have really sucked. Thankfully, a touchdowns or 6 points. But Sutton, I did tell you to start on Thursday, and sadly, that did not work out. He had a bad game, only 40 yards against the Chiefs. So this year, he didn't have a single touchdown against them. He had 4 touchdowns in his previous 4 games. So this year, the well ran dry, and I apologize on the endorsement of Sutton, but I don't really think I would have ever considered to bench him, especially after the week he had the prior game. That was a shocker. But Jawan Jennings with no Kittle potentially, I think is a lock in the lineup. Even if Kittle plays, he's well above Pearsall, and this game is likely a high-scoring shootout, especially in their home stadium. The Niners should play well. So start Jawan Jennings. I want him in the lineup for sure. And then JMO, I also did tell you to start, but yikes. The Vikings really, really shut him down. So bummer on that one. The Lions were terrible. But Stefon Diggs, I still have in the top 20. Against the Jets, hell yeah. There's also an injury to Kayshon Boutte that's going to force him out. Same with Matt Collins. And his real competition is only Kyle Williams and Pop Douglas. So unless Hunter Henry just has the game of his life, same with TreVeyon, and there's just not enough touches to go around, and that's the only scenario this blows up in your face. I would absolutely trust Diggs against the Jets. There's a world where he's like a top 5 play, to be honest with you. But a little worried about touchdown. That's the only thing that might evade him. I do kind of like Kyle Williams, to be honest, this week. But Brian Thomas I have right behind Diggs, and I think on talent alone, they're both locks in the lineup top 20. I'm not going to bench Brian Thomas at the Colts. That defense, even with Sauce Gardner, I still think I'm going to start Brian Thomas. I understand the hesitation, but this is as low as I can go. Thomas, I think, can still torch them, to be honest. So if you go back to last year, he did play pretty well against the Colts. In his 3 career games against Indianapolis, he is averaging 14.9 points per game, an average of 104 yards per game, and only 1 touchdown. He does it with yards every time against the Colts. I don't think they can guard him down the field, but perhaps I'm not crediting Sauce Gardner enough. But I'm going to start him. I think this is a stud that has too high upside where I will still start him despite a somewhat difficult matchup. But I understand if you think I'm too high, this can get a little tricky with Gardner now active. But WanDale I have right behind him, and WanDale gets a ton of volume. Theo Johnson is not going to play, so that'll increase even more. And I do want WanDale in the lineup. Just outside the top 20, I think he's a very reliable floor play. No doubt about it. But then Jefferson, I really apologize. He fell back down to earth, and I got fooled by this matchup. I also got fooled by Terry. In fact, Debo was the right guy to start, and this one was a bummer. Both misses on Terry and Jefferson. But Waddle, I think the volume will be fine. I think he can still give you 9 targets. But with Ewers, I wouldn't expect a touchdown. That's the problem with Waddle this week. But a high floor play, kind of similar to WanDale. The volume will carry you, but you probably don't crack like 20 points. I'm trusting at least like 12, though, from Waddle. I think the volume is fine to bet on. DeVonta, I'm also going to start, I think, a solid flex play against the Bills. That game's probably high scoring, so not going to fade him too much. I think I want to continue to start DeVonta Smith. And then Jakobi Meyers, maybe I'm really underestimating Sauce Gardner, and Meyers going to go really, really off against the Colts here. But Parker Washington's emergence is why I'm reluctant. There's also Brenton Strange. It's kind of crowded in Jacksonville. So if you don't get a touchdown, you could get burned. But I still believe that Thomas is the more productive receiver in Jacksonville, and Meyers with that contract extension I think is confirmed as still the number 2. That matchup last week against Denver was a bit tricky, so that's why I think they had to pivot to the number 3, and that's why I think Parker Washington is still behind Meyers in this offense. So good luck with Meyers, but I still think he's a legit higher end flex play that I would more likely than not start in my lineup. But beyond this point, now we're getting into the clear flex territory, and I think every single name down the list loses quite some appeal. However, in the exact same game we just spoke about, I think all 3 Colts receivers are all very comparably valued, in my opinion. My preference, though, is Alec Pierce. He gets targeted deeper down the field, and those plays are just worth more, and he's more dynamic. I feel like he's one of the better athletes that just doesn't ever get his props. Actually, a really impressive athlete, if you ask me. But Alec Pierce needs those deep shots to hit. Obviously, Rivers could fall off randomly, but I wouldn't bet on it. I think Rivers has impressed me, to be honest, so I'm going to trust him. And last week was just so good for Pierce. I think he has the highest upside of the 3, and that's why I rank him the highest. But it also feels like Downs has a good connection with Rivers. The checkdowns for Downs have been pretty consistent, and he also scored a touchdown 2 weeks ago. So Downs, I still think, is a little safer than Pittman. Pittman seems to be the odd man out with Rivers, but I kind of just think it's the coverage and Rivers just going away from it. He has good options, and that's why Downs is benefiting, and so is Pierce. Pierce is my favorite, but they're all connected, all 3 back-to-back-to-back. Downs over Pittman, all behind Alec Pierce. So good luck with them. I think one of these guys will burn you. If I had to pick one that doesn't work out, it's Pittman of the 3. But Ted McMillan against the Seahawks, terrible matchup here, but still probably gets like 8 targets, so that keeps him interesting. And he probably puts up a similar stat line to like what Nico Collins did. Maybe more like Jefferson, but somewhere in the middle. I would assume like 65 yards from Ted. And that's kind of what Luther Burden's been consistently offering when he's been healthy. Last week he missed, so perhaps he's not 100%. Maybe he falls off. But against the Niners, that game should be pretty high scoring, and I like what I've seen from Burden down the field. Caleb isn't afraid to chuck it deep, and the connection is building. He's been pretty solid last month or so when healthy. So Burden will play, Rhamondre will not. I like Burden a decent amount. A solid flex play. I bumped him up since my last ranking. Someone asked me about him as opposed to Chris Godwin, and originally I ranked Godwin higher, but then I thought about it more, and I think Burden has the better situation. I'd rather go Burden than Godwin, but I'd still rather go Tet. I still think I'd rather bet on a number 1 that's going to get more volume than Burden. So good luck with him. Solid flex play, not bad at all, but without a touchdown, you probably only get like 8 points. Godwin, I think, is in the same territory, but more likely, I think he can score a touchdown. I think he will be looked to in the red zone this week. I just got a feeling, but he has been stepping up a little bit more reliably than Igbuka lately. So the number 2, I believe, is clearly Godwin, and that, in my opinion, has value as a good flex play just outside the top 30. But then I have Quentin Johnston, who didn't find the end zone, but had a good game, almost 100 yards. And then Ladd was okay, but not as productive. I think I ranked the Chargers all 3 pretty correctly, but I wish I put Keenan lower. I'll just mention him now. Keenan was ranked too high. This was a blind spot. My Chargers bias definitely showed up on Keenan, but there were some contract incentives for him, odd usage in this game. QJ, though, was the most valuable of the 3 by far. Definitely the best play of the 3. So hopefully you benched even Ladd, but QJ was fine. Khalil Shakir, I think, is going to be in that similar zone of like, you could have a really mediocre game, you could have a good game, but odds are that volume is worth betting on. In that offense, it's going to be higher scoring. Likely than not, I think Shakir is a good flex option, but has been very inconsistent. The passing game in Buffalo is not one I want to trust, and at wide receiver 35, I might just pass. At this point, you can definitely bench him if you don't have the space. But moving forward, this is definitely more desperate territory, and this tier, I think, is just shooting for upside. We got Franklin here, who didn't quite step up, but had been playing well at times, and no Pat Bryant, so I was wrong. Sadly, it didn't work out. I was right on Watson and his upside, but if anything, I ranked him too low. But that's what this tier is. There's a lot of risk, and with Malik Willis, did you really feel confident? I doubt you knew for sure what would happen. I ranked him as the best play of Green Bay with high upside, but definitely risky. Definitely put him a little bit too low, but that's what this tier kind of is. You don't know how bad it can be, but you know there's at least a chance it can be great. So with Watson, it worked out. With Franklin, it didn't. Wish I ranked him opposite at least. But Kyle Williams, I am growing a lot of faith in. I believe Kyle Williams has elite upside this week because it's against the Jets. That's kind of all I need to know. Kyle Williams can have a house call, if not 2, and it wouldn't shock me at all. And then on top of that, he's going to be the number 2 target at receiver. There's no Kayshon Boutte. There's no Mac Hollins, so there's a lot of routes to be run by Kyle Williams. He will occupy the role outside. There's going to be Pop Douglas in the slot, Diggs opposite him, but Kyle Williams might run 90+% of the snaps. This rookie could go off against the Jets. So like the matchup, like the circumstances, Kyle Williams has that 20-point ceiling I want to chase. So that's my logic. Like, yeah, he's very risky and probably doesn't do it, but I genuinely don't think there's another player behind him that has higher upside. I want to take the swing, and against the Jets, I believe Kyle Williams can play well. So at this point, I'm definitely telling you to bench all these players. That's my genuine recommendation. But in a win-or-go-home scenario, shooting for the fence, if I need a shot at the moon, I would go Kyle Williams. I also think Thielen is pretty appealing given the suspension to DK Metcalf. I think Thielen will be the top target for Rodgers. And maybe it goes to MVS more often, but I think Thielen will get the biggest volume in that offense. So that's valuable. It's more of a floor play, though, more of a safety net. And that's where I'm of the mindset I'll take the swing for elite potential on Kyle Williams above the veteran, Adam Thielen. Watch him do nothing. Watch him still suck. I got a bad feeling about Adam Thielen. But Igbuka, yikes, I got a worse feeling there. He's been fading fast. Some drops have been a problem, and I think Baker's lost some confidence. I would much rather go Godwin than Igbuka. But Harrison didn't look healthy last week. The heel injury is a problem, and I'm not going to press my luck. If I don't have to, I'll avoid it. There's just name value here with Harrison and Igbuka holding on in the rankings. So they could definitely blow up and not be good at all. Could also give you like 80 yards. I hope you get a touchdown, but I doubt it hits this week for either. No thanks on Igbuka, no thanks on Harrison. And name value is really all Keenan was clinging to himself. So that was a bad call, too high, but still told you to bench him. Wide receiver 42 is not a player I want to start typically, but I might be wrong on Parker Washington. I feel like if there's one passing game I might be ranking totally incorrectly, it's Jacksonville, because it's not like Gardner is a easy matchup for Thomas. I'm just trusting his talent. And then Meyers was nowhere near as good as Washington last week, but I just kind of feel like it's a fluke. Like, Washington scares me quite a lot. So if you trust him, if you want to bet on it, then be my guest. That's what this tier's about, the elite upside, low floor. And maybe if you want to swap him with Kyle Williams, I'd understand. But I kind of view all of them, starting with Kyle Williams, all the same. To be honest, they all scare the shit out of me, to be honest. So good luck with him, but I don't think it'll work out. It might, and I hope I'm wrong. If you do, I wouldn't bet on it, though. Then we got Kamari DK, another number one receiver, but in offense I don't want to bet on. The tight ends are the only pass catchers with value in Tennessee. And then Judy, I think it's the same. Even though against Pittsburgh, it's tempting, he could be okay, I only trust Harold Fannin and Dylan Sampson. Then we got Debo, who had 10 points. He had the game I thought Terry would have. That was a bit shocking. But Shaheed, I think, is the secret sauce for the Seahawks. I think they need to get him involved more if they want to make noise in the playoffs. So Shaheed, whenever he touches the ball, is dynamic, but sadly a lot of those touches are on special teams and it just doesn't count. Good luck with Shaheed if you have to. But Dobbs did not quite have the game we were hoping for, but didn't rank him too high, wasn't really a believer. His final stat line was 3 for 62. That's okay, but it's not really that helpful in the fantasy championship. 8 points, less than 8 points, not ideal, but maybe isn't the end of the world. If your opponent has like a 3-pointer somewhere, then that will be enough to cover you at times. But then we got Ricky Pearsall right behind him, and his injury status is a big problem. So I think he'll play, but I just don't think it's like gonna be worth it. He hasn't quite stepped up. But if you tell me Kittle doesn't play, which I assume is not going to happen, I believe Kittle will suit up. However, if he does not, if Pearsall is the number 2 target, I guess number 3 behind McCaffrey, I would bump him up above Godwin, but still behind Burden. I would bump him up right here, just below Terry in the rankings. Right behind Burden, right above Godwin. About, what is that, 12 spots higher? Something like that. My math is not mathing at this time. So Pearsall, bench him with Kittle active, but more of an intriguing flex option if Kittle is not going to suit up. A.D. Mitchell, not my cup of tea this week. I just don't think it's wise against the Patriots and Christian Gonzalez. I'm going to pass. But Darius Slayton could benefit with no Theo Johnson against the Raiders. It is a good matchup. However, yikes. Really? I don't feel good about that. I would not recommend it. So, more of a DFS swing, but at this stage, I've told you to bench everyone. It's not a surprise. I'm telling you to bench Darius Slayton, but there is upside against the Raiders with no Theo Johnson. Those targets have to go elsewhere. Last player ranked is Jalen Coker, who has contributed at times. I don't want to fully give up on him just because of one bad game. The previous 2, he did have a touchdown in both, but it's against the Seahawks. That's why I'm worried. That's why he's outside the top 50. But maybe he is the secret weapon for the Panthers. So that's it for the receiver rankings. If you still have questions, let me know down below. But in general, once we hit Jakobi Meyers, that's where I'm more inclined to bench those players. Just the flex options through Shakir, that I think is where I would rather fade them. Or just hope for the ceiling if I don't feel confident that the floor will get me the win. So that's it for receiver. Let's move on to the quarterback position, where these are my top 10. I think if you have these 10, these are the guys I want the most this week. Number 1, very obvious, no-brainer. We got Josh Allen. Bad weather game in Buffalo. That's always an advantage in his favor. So going to start him, no doubt about it. He's the best play. And then Stafford, I think, punches his ticket for the MVP. I think he plays lights out, but I do think Allen will play better. Allen, I think, will have more rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. Stafford might have 5 passing touchdowns and still not outperform Allen, in my opinion. He is clearly number 2. But number 3, I have Drake May against the Jets, and that matchup's awesome. We saw Trevor Lawrence drop 40 a few weeks ago, and May could legitimately do it himself as well. But maybe this is a great game for the run game. I could also see him miss out on some touchdown production just because TreVeyon and Rhamondre punch it in so easily. That Jets run defense is one of the worst in the league. So good luck for that not to happen. But I do think I'm not benching May unless I have Stafford or Allen. But we got Burrow right behind him. Arizona's defense is extremely injured, so there's no red flags at all. Higgins is active, so is Jamar. Burrow should play lights out. But Dak had an okay game, about 21 points, so could have been better, but I did tell you to start him, and I think that was the right call. Against the Commanders, it was a great matchup. Trevor Lawrence, though, could have a better game against the Colts. That matchup's not scary, and he's been on a heater, but I only have him number 6. I feel like it's still destined to fall off at some point. I just can't quite wrap my brain around how Trevor Lawrence is this good right now. So I'm just going to trust it, but behind Burrow, maybe I'm not trusting it enough. Also behind May, that might be a bad call given how well Lawrence is playing. But he gets the Colts in division. That is sometimes tricky. His average stat line versus Indianapolis is 18.3 points. His last 4 games, while he has 2 passing touchdowns in every single one, he's only averaging about 250 passing yards and also has thrown 3 interceptions. So an average of 18.3, that's good, but I do think he'll top it. I think he'll go over 23 in this game. I like Lawrence as a good start against the Indianapolis Colts. Then we got Brock Purdy, and if Kittle was a lock to play, I'd have Purdy above Burrow. But I don't know for sure if Kittle will suit up, and that's a big deal for Purdy this season and throughout his career. So for that reason, I would negate a touchdown that I know would just hit with Kittle, and that's going to be the difference between QB4 and QB7 in my projections. So good matchup here. That Bears game, I think, will be very high scoring, but maybe not. Maybe there's some turnovers as well. With no Kittle, I'd be a bit more concerned, but I'd still start Purdy in the top 10. I'm also going to start Caleb in the same game. I think this game is a massive shootout. That Niners defense doesn't scare me at all. And even without Rhamondre, I trust Ben Johnson to light up the Niners defense. He did last year. Shanahan did not have Salah backing him up, though, and maybe that's a problem for Caleb Williams. But I still think he's going to have elite upside. To be honest, I think Caleb could finish as the QB1. The Niners matchup on Sunday night might decide the number 1 overall seed, and I believe Ben Johnson's game plan will be fantastic. I think Caleb has elite upside in this game. So if anything, I might be ranking him too low, but the names above him, I just don't think I can put him any higher. And then Bo Nix had a decent game against the Chiefs, but could have been better. I had him low top 10, so that call looks decent. And then Jalen Hurts probably steps up in the snow, but just hasn't quite been like truly elite this season. Not anymore. He's not that top 2, top 3 guy week in, week out. So top 10, not going to bench him, but on the lower end of the must-start territory. However, beyond the top 10, unless you're in a deeper format, it's just not quite as relevant. So these are the rest of my quarterback rankings in the top 28, and really it's the next 5 that pique my interest the most. In Superflex, you can start up to 20 most of the time, but in a regular 12-team league, maybe you have to stream the position, and honestly, quarterbacks 11 through 15 are all kind of the same most of the time. But we do have Jackson Dart here because of the rushing stats. He doesn't have Theo Johnson, but Theo Johnson hasn't caught a touchdown in a while, so I don't think that really changes much. The volume can go elsewhere, and he can still thrive. If anything, he'll run the ball even more. So love Jackson Dart for the ceiling this week. 2 weeks ago was terrible against the Vikings, but I am still going to trust Jackson Dart. I think against the Raiders, he will bounce back. So QB 11, high upside for sure, in the same territory as Jalen Hurts, another running quarterback. But then I'll make the pivot to a pocket quarterback with Kirk Cousins. Against the Rams, it's a great matchup, a top 7 matchup in the last month. So I like London this week. I think the touchdowns will hit. And Pitts is playing well, so does Bijan in the passing game. Cousins is very safe, if you ask me. But maybe you don't trust him off the wire. People still haven't come around. And I still think Brissett is like kind of the exact same thing as Cousins. I genuinely think you're getting about 20 plus points kind of guaranteed from both. And that's kind of what you got from Bo Nix. So it's not that much different. Like quarterback 13 isn't that much different then QB9, if you ask me. So, pretty safe play. The Bengals matchup has been great all season, and Brissett should play well. I would assume that continues. Baker against the Dolphins isn't fully healthy. I think he has a shoulder injury that's just not keeping him viable too much, and that's, I think, is a big problem with the offense. So reluctant to fully endorse, but the Dolphins matchup doesn't scare you, so let's kind of flex him if we have to. Top 15 is okay, but not elite. Then I have Darnold against the Panthers, and could play really well, but I could also see the run game just dominate. I'm worried about touchdowns. I think he hands it off a little too much on the goal line this week. So good luck with Darnold, just a floor play. I think this tier is giving you a guarantee of like 16 with a chance for 20 plus, but definitely more inclined to bet on that with guys like Brissett, Cousins, and Dart. Beyond the top 15, I got Rivers at 16, and he looked good against the Niners, but that Jags matchup is tricky at times. I'm worried about that, but he's playing awesome, and now he gets to play at home. That could help him quite a bit. Like, they've been on the road, and without the silent count, I'm sure that'll help a little bit. So, good luck, Rivers, but outside the top 15, I am telling you to bench him. And I had Herbert right behind him. Herbert had a lot of rushing stats, 15 points. This kind of feels like an appropriate rank in hindsight. Like, not elite, not atrocious, just mid and only valuable in Superflex. So, top 20, but not top 15, a good rank if you ask me. And then Goff was awful. Oh my God. Even worse than I thought. I did tell you to bench him, though. I did not endorse Goff unless you were in a very deep format. Shuck, though, obviously I wish I ranked him behind Malik Willis, but Shuck gets a good matchup against the Titans. Could be a great spot. Maybe he outperforms them. I doubt it. It's been a really impressive game out of Malik Willis. Even Huntley had like 60 rushing yards, but Willis was phenomenal with also 2 rushing touchdowns. So a great play. I wish I ranked him higher. I started him in DFS in the Saturday primetime Palooza, but damn, I didn't have Derrick Henry, so it didn't work out for me. But Malik Willis really impressed me. I think he deserves perhaps a higher pay. Then we got CJ Stroud, who did have 2 deep touchdowns, but also 2 picks. So the turnovers did happen as I thought, but didn't expect that house call from Jaden Higgins. That one was rather shocking. So gonna finish higher than this on the week, but honestly, I don't regret telling you to bench him. Josh Johnson did not play well against Dallas, so not a good player there. Geno against the Giants is actually kind of tempting. I think it could be valuable, but I think I'm going to avoid it. I think in fantasy in the championship round, nah. I thought Josh Johnson against the Cowboys in a better matchup would be better. So good luck with Geno, but the matchup is good. Let's not pretend the Giants have a good defense. My problem with Geno, though, he doesn't have Bowers, and without him on the field, yikes. No thanks with Geno. But Rodgers against Shador should be interesting, more of a defensive game. Without Metcalf, I don't think it totally holds him back, but honestly, I don't see much of a difference. Like 1 touchdown, 220 yards from both is my projection, and an extra pick with Shador. But Brosmer, probably I should have Bryce Young instead of Brosmer and Ewers. That's probably a bit disrespectful in hindsight. But those are my quarterback rankings. I'm trusting the top 10. And ideally, once we hit Baker in a 12-team league, I am not going to start that level of quarterback. Behind Brissett, I think is pretty tricky, to be honest. So good luck there. Let's move on to tight end. We're not done with these rankings. And at tight end, I think the top 10 are pretty much locks in the lineup. I think if you've been riding them all year, I'm not going to bench him. I'm going to test fate and stick with them. No doubt about it. McBride gets the best tight end matchup of them all. The Bengals, I think, will give him 2 touchdowns this week. So cannot bench him for sure. But Kittle is tricky. If Kittle's active, I would rank him number 2. But the beauty of Kittle is that he has the perfect handcuff, Jake Tonjes, who consistently scores touchdowns in his absence. So as long as you handcuff Jake Tonjes, then you can afford to wait out Kittle as a game time decision. I believe he will play, so I think it's totally worth it. I think it'll work out. But I genuinely think if you have Tonjes, you're getting a top 10 play at the position. So fully hold out on Kittle. Make sure you have Tonjes, but I do believe it's worth it. I have Kittle at number 2, and I want to start him. Definitely if he plays. I would hate to have him on the bench in the fantasy championship. So just handcuff him. That's the play this week. If you don't have Tonjes, you are way too risky taking a major gamble that is not worth it. You should have Tonjes behind George Kittle. But Fannin playing amazing right now. Definitely the only part of Cleveland you like. Can't bench him. The volume's insane. The touchdowns are hitting. Even in the run game, Fannin is the man. So tight end 3, no doubt. Can't bench him at all. And then can't bench Kyle Pitts. What are you doing if you do that? That's insane. Gonna be great against the Rams. I don't fear LA at all. Goddard also on a great heater at the moment. Touchdown feels kind of guaranteed, so not gonna take him out. I want the hot streak to continue. And then Taysom Hill, I know it sounds shocking because he's off the wire, but I genuinely think is the must start this week at tight end. Is the RB1. He's a cheat code. They don't trust Estime. They don't trust anyone else. Last week, Taysom Hill had 12 rush attempts, 6 targets, 4 catches. He had 13 fantasy points. I think he's going over 10, guaranteed. I trust the volume. I think he finds the end zone. Touchdown for Taysom. Give me Taysom in the top 10. I don't want to bench Taysom Hill off the wire. Unless you have the top 5. But at 6, give me Taysom over everyone else. I did tell you Ferguson would be top 10. At least he scored a touchdown, but not the best game. Bad yards out of Ferguson. So maybe Henry has a much better game. I could see that happen against the Jets. Definitely possible. And I do want to start Henry against the New York Jets. Feels like a good spot for him. If we look at his experience against the Jets, his last 4 games have been kind of bad, but last year, in both of them, he had 45 yards. That is the bare minimum at this position you can tolerate. So that, I think, is the floor. About 6 points, 45 yards, 4 catches, something like that. Good luck, but against the Jets, you could also get 3 touchdowns. I think it's worth the bet against the Jets. And then Dalton Schultz didn't quite pay off, but I think if Jaden Higgins hadn't had that house call, then maybe that first drive would have been more meticulous and maybe more receptions when they were actually playing well. The offense really stalled out after the first quarter. So Schultz just didn't get the looks. Sadly, the defense did cover him pretty well. So I ranked him too high. I apologize on that. Bad call there. And then Tonjes here, if he does play, I would rank in the top 10 behind Hunter Henry. I wouldn't start him over Hunter Henry. So if that's your contingent plan, then I'm fine with that. But it's so close for me between Tonjes and Hunter Henry. I would just handcuff and wait out Kittle if I have Kittle. I don't think I would start Hunter Henry instead of Kittle. I would just roster Tonjes and accept what happens with Tonjes if Kittle doesn't play. So start Tonjes. He is the handcuff you need. I want the Niners tight end, regardless of who it is. But now these are my lower end tight end plays, and really only the next 5 would pique my interest. In general, you're not starting more than 12 tight ends in most leagues. So Loveland, I did bump behind Jake Tonjes. I think in the same game, I'd rather have Tonjes if he was active, but Loveland I still think has upside in a shootout of a game. Juwan Johnson, definitely viable as well. A good floor play at the position, more of a PPR asset. Not expecting touchdowns, though. That's where the upside is a bit capped with Juwan. But a good top 12 play, very consistent this season. AJ Barner, also pretty consistent, but under the radar. I think also a legit play. The Carolina Panthers have been a top 8 matchup for tight ends this season. So I do trust him a decent amount. I think the volume should be okay, and a touchdown is not a bad bet. Okonkwo is also the top target in Tennessee. Against the Saints, could play pretty well. I like Okonkwo in the top 15. A player that does not get his credit, very under the radar, but is actually a legit start week in, week out. Last month has been great from Okonkwo. Brenton Strange could also score another touchdown, but kind of needs it. Without a touchdown, he's been bad at times, but he's hit quite often. As he's gotten healthier, Trevor Lawrence is playing really well, and Strange has contributed to that success. So Strange in the top 15, not bad, but I did tell you Oronde Gadsden had a good matchup for a touchdown this week, and our prop projection did hit on Oronde Gadsden. I hit 4 out of 5. Sadly, we did not cash the entire entry. The only one that let us down was Dalton Schultz, actually. I was 20 yards short on Schultz. I hit all 4 of my other picks on that game. So Gadsden was one of them. We projected the touchdown. A little optimistic. I didn't feel like you could lock him in, but I did rank him at 16 as a lower end flex play. He had been bad up to that point, though, and he had some drops. He cost them the game, if you really think about it, in the red zone. So Gadsden didn't play awesome, but did score a touchdown to save you. I doubt you started him. Most people didn't trust him. Tyler Warren, though, hasn't played well with Rivers. Maybe it's just a fluke. Maybe it comes back to him, but he's not having that Antonio Gates connection, as I thought that first game 2 weeks ago. Instead, Alec Pierce is the guy you want in Indy. So good luck here. I don't think it works out, but it could randomly come back to him all of a sudden. And then Kelsey didn't play amazing in his final game at Arrowhead. But Colby Parkinson splitting volume with Terrence Ferguson last week, especially on the goal line. That was very annoying. And that's where I'm not going to endorse Parkinson vehemently. I've told you to start him at times, and it has worked out, but I genuinely think that they would love if this second round rookie does emerge for the playoffs. So I think they'll give Ferguson some opportunity. With no Adams, they're both involved, but they both eat into each other too much to have enough value. One could be great, the other could be terrible, and odds are you pick incorrectly. I still prefer Parkinson, but I have Ferguson right behind him. Andrews against the Packers didn't quite have a good game. It was the Derrick Henry show, and I was happy to fade Andrews. But then we have Kincaid and Knox, who are both game time decisions, missed practice Wednesday, Thursday, and I think they'll both play, but honestly, I could see Knox be the better option. Kincaid has been so disappointing, but still, I think the better athlete of the two. So I'll still prefer Kincaid, but at this stage, I'm benching everyone. I'm also benching Waller against the Bucks without Tua. Don't trust him. He hasn't scored touchdowns since the bye as often, so not ideal with Ewers. And then Gunnar Helm looks like he's behind Okonkwo once again. Ingram didn't have a good game, so glad I faded him quite a bit. And then Komet, a dark horse candidate, but I'm only going to trust Loveland if I'm starting a Bears tight end. And then last player is Gesicki. I previously had Theo Johnson at number 17, and with him being taken out, Gesicki makes the cut. So those are my tight end rankings. Once you hit Brenton Strange, I think that's the cutoff point in my consideration. I think everyone beyond Brenton Strange was and is worth benching. So that's it at tight end. Hopefully you can get your hands on Taysom Hill or handcuff Kittle to Jake Tonjes. Good luck. I think those are the two main acquisitions off the wire that move the needle. Taysom Hill and Jake Tonjes this week. But lastly, these are my top 10 defenses. These are the ones I want to start. And most of them are just really talented defenses that I think you should have been stashing this whole time. So there's really no defense off the wire that I'm looking to that I really love. The Broncos, though, are definitely the best start. The Broncos, I thought, would have the best game against the Chiefs and a third stringer. But maybe the Patriots will be better against the Jets. That's definitely possible. The Chargers had 2 turnovers, but not enough sacks, and only gave up 20 points, but not as good as I would have thought. That first quarter was bad by the Chargers defense. Everything after that was great. The first quarter, though, was dog shit. The Steelers against Cleveland should be a good floor play at the very least. I think they're a top 5 play, no doubt. Against Cleveland, you should have to feel compelled to start Pittsburgh. But the Saints against the Titans are always a good spot, so let's trust them. Their defense has been stepping up. So I guess the Saints are actually my favorite pick off the waiver wire at defense, if you can still get them. But then we have Houston, who did show up against the Chargers. Good for them. That defense is the best in the league. I hoped we could beat them, but always knew it'd be tough. And if not for some missed kicks, maybe there would have been overtime, but they probably would have won it at the buzzer with a field goal of their own. So Texans always in control of that game. Their defense was a great play. I'm glad I ranked him top 6 at least, but probably better than the Chargers in hindsight. I thought the Chargers would win, but the Seahawks at Carolina, I think, are still top 10. That defense is too good to fade, so let's start them. The Panthers don't scare you enough. The Browns against Pittsburgh, though, with no DK Metcalf. At home, I think they step up. At home, they do have a good record against Mike Tomlin. So let's go Cleveland in the top 10. That game should be very low scoring, in my opinion. But the Lions defense was not as good as the Vikings, so bad call here in hindsight. And then the Cowboys were okay against the Commanders. Not amazing, not bad, just okay from Dallas. But outside the top 10, really only the next 5 pique my interest. I'm really benching all of them, though, in a regular 10-team league. I got Tennessee hosting the Saints. The Saints aren't that scary. The Titans aren't good, though, so this could be problematic. Maybe just go with the Rams. But against Bijan, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, I think you're not going to have a safe floor here. I think the floor is safer with the Titans, to be honest, against the Saints. So higher upside with the Rams, but not a good matchup, so not ideal. And then the Ravens and Packer game was a bit higher scoring than I would have thought. The Ravens, though, were the better play. They did win the game. But the Bucks, last one that even I'd consider against the Dolphins, I honestly hate all the matchups moving forward. I wish I believed in the Vikings. They're really talented, but the Lions offense I thought would play better, so bad call there. The Dolphins against Tampa, not a good matchup at all. I think Baker will step up in a must-win. The Jags, though, at the Colts, Rivers looks okay, so the Jags will win, probably. At least their defense should play better, but not the safest play, if you ask me. Carolina against Seattle. They play really well on the road, so not ideal with the Panthers. The Colts hosting Jacksonville. Lawrence is on a heater. And then this Bills-Eagles game, a shootout. The Bengals against Arizona. Fuck that shit. So that's it for the rankings. Those are all 5 positions. And that's going to be it for this video. If you still have any questions, let me know. But I got to edit this and get to bed. I wish you luck. Trust your gut. If you disagree on any of my rankings, this is the week where I think you should go with your intuition and make your own decision. This is the week where you should call the shots. If you don't like my take, don't go with it. That is my advice. This week, trust your gut more so than any other week. If you win, it needs to be on your terms above all else. That's it, though. I'll see y'all Monday. We're not done. I'll see you on Monday. Peace out. Good luck. Hope you get the win and the championship.